Hey guys, we're in the workshop again today at a request from Bees. He's asking, can we make an inner cover without our miter saw? And the answer is yes. So we're going to go through that. We're going to cue the intro here in a second, but leave me a comment if you have any feelings about the intro. If it's good, if it's bad, if it's too long, so I can get it resolved. Thanks. Alright, so before I start getting into how to make this, I just want you to see what it's really going to look like as we're getting close to being done. Essentially what we're making is a picture frame. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at an inner cover, it's a picture frame with an insert, and why not? This is going to be 19 7/8 if we're making any of the hives, because that's the length of our frame, or the box. And then the short side is going to differ if you're making an 8 frame, a 5 frame, or a 10 frame. So this one right now is 13 3/4. And I'll put all that on the screen, but we're just going to have it like this. I'll show you how to insert Luan wood or whatever wood you want to put in. I use Luan wood. It's lighter, it's cheaper. You can put whatever fits in the groove here. Our first step is going to be taking our table saw down to 1.5 inches. Okay. Now, if you're using a circular saw, you're going to have to basically set up the same sort of setup as a table saw. So I would recommend clamp your piece of wood down to a table, and then put a fence like that, and then run your blade 1.5 inches down the wood so that you get our 1.5 inches here. Now I would display this, but I'm just trying to make this sweet and easy for everybody. Alright, so I cut my scrap wood, and it only provided me 3 1.5 inch pieces. So I ran around the shop and I found another one that's very similar, and it is exactly 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to use this as a standby, but when you go to buy your wood, or if you have scrap wood, just make sure you measure it and that you have an extra piece lying around that can substitute in if you miscalculated. Measure twice, cut once. That's a beekeeping thing too, right? All right, next what we're going to do is set our table to 13 3/4. That's going to set us up with short end pieces. Let's move that a little bit. There you go. There's proof. No oopsies. So 13 3/4, that's going to give us short ends. So we only need to cut 2 pieces of wood to this length. All right, you may notice that my wood is different thicknesses. Might be easier to show that way. Now, I use rough cut lumber. If you're using lumber bought from the store, it's going to say 1 inch by 1 inch or whatever. It's really 3/4. So you're already set. You won't have to worry about cutting this down to 3/4, but 3/4 is a requirement for this build. So I'm going to make sure all the thicknesses match 3/4. I'm just going to run it through the table saw since it's a small project, but if it was a bigger project, I'd run it through the planer. That way all the wood is exactly the same on top and bottom. In this case, I'm not really super concerned. It's just an inner cover. It's going to be covered by a top cover. and the bees will propolis it. All right, our next step is to cut our long sides. So what we're going to do is go ahead and start moving the table saw down to 19 7/8, 1/8, 2/8. Boom, 7/8. Maybe I just taught somebody how to count eighths. We'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead and cut our long sides. So you may notice I use my clamps a lot, and that is because I like to cut multiple pieces of wood at the same time, and I want to try and keep that cut on the end as straight as possible depending on which side it's on. That way I have a bunch of pieces that are very, very similar, if not perfect. So that's one thing that I like to do. You don't have to do it, but it reduces your time because we have 20-ish hives here, and it's like if I'm making one inner cover for each of them, I want to just get the job done and done right. So if you have any tricks or tips, let us know in the comments. Okay, so our next step is to set up our table saw to cut our 45-degree angle. And right now this is going to be super easy because we haven't cut this groove yet, which is good. That means our wood is nice and flat. We don't have to worry about it rocking or doing anything crazy. So we're going to, I'm just going to take my extra piece, I'm going to line it up with the end of the fence, and I'll just scoot it in until it meets the blade. Once it's touching the blade, I'm good to go. It's nice and flat on this side. It's touching the blade on this side. So I can take this out. I use that as a template, but if you need to know what the dimensions are, it is going to be 18.5. So, and I'll put that on the screen too. 18.5, just set your table saw to that. Go ahead, secure it, and then we'll make our cuts. The little pieces that get cut off while the blade's moving, don't reach your fingers in here to grab them. If anything, use a scrap piece of wood and kind of knock them out of there. Your scrap piece, you don't care if it's cut by the blade. Other things that could happen are if these touch the blade again, they'll shoot back at you. I have an apron on, so if it hits me, I'm like, oh, that was dumb. But if you have little kids around or you're not wearing an apron or something, you could tear your shirt or it could impale you. And that's not something you want to deal with. And I really, that's the one thing I don't want to see in the comments is I hurt myself doing this. So, all right, now that that's out of the way, I went and grabbed my template for the short sides. And what I'm going to do here is the same thing I did with the long sides. Let's move this out of the way. Ooh. So that's set. Remember, nice and flat on this side, also touching the blade on this side. That's going to put us at 12 inches flat. So if you go ahead and set your table saw at 12 inches, we can make these cuts. All right, so sometimes you can make a mistake. I went back and I measured this. This was cut at 13 and just over a half. So not the 13 3/4 that we talked about at the beginning. It should still be okay, but I said 12 flat. Go ahead and do 12 1/4. And then that should resolve your issue here. All right, now we're going to set the height of the blade to about 1/4. It should be 1/4. but when I do it, it's always a little off, and that happens. Let's take it down. All right, and once you do that, set your table saw to 3/4. And I'll show you the matchup here. So this is our template. It's already got the groove cut. So I'm going to save 3/4 on this side, and I'm going to cut a groove on the inside here that's going to be approximately 1/2 inch. All right, so we've cut the first part of our groove. Now we're going to end up chopping up the rest of this and making a nice professional looking rabbit, essentially. So there's that. If you're curious what this guy is, it's called Micro Jig. It's the gripper. We're not sponsored by them. It is made in the United States, it says, but we're not sponsored. But it is a tool that if your wood explodes on you while you're running it through the table saw, you're not messing up your hands, you're messing up the jig. So I know that some people are going to push it through like this and have their hand over it. Don't do that, please. Get something like a pusher, and you can put the pusher there and just put this on top. A spare piece of wood. Let's pretend this is not a piece of our inner cover, but you can put the spare piece of wood over and run it through. Just don't hurt yourself, guys. I wish they sponsored us. That'd be cool. Free stuff. I like that just as much as anybody else. But there you go. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust the table saw so that we can cut this groove, and then essentially we're done with the saws and the cutting. All right, now that we cut our groove, we now need to figure out what we need to set the table saw at in order to cut this piece. So you cut in 1/4 of an inch. That's good. And how are we going to figure out what the distance between the bottom here and the 1/4 of an inch is? That's pretty easy. We're just going to raise the table saw up until the blades are in this channel.
Oops, too high. Right about there. So it's right inside the groove.
All right, our next step, after we've set the table saw blade, the height, so that we can cut this little section off, we're then going to look at what exactly we did. We cut, this is 3/4 thick, we cut 1/4 groove, so we have about 1/2 inch right here, and that 1/2 inch we want to save. So when you run your pieces through, channel facing the outside, essentially, because you want to save 1/2 inch, and that's between the fence and the blade is 1/2 inch, and that's what we're going to run. We're just going to run it straight down, all the way down. I'm going to use my jig again in order to stay safe, and then we'll have all our pieces cut. All right, so we've cut our nice little rabbit here. It gives us these cool little kind of stylish pieces. I know a lot of people that will go ahead and take these pieces, instead of burning them or getting rid of them, they do designs on their hives. Like they make a Bavarian looking house instead of a beehive. So it's a beehive, but the exterior is decorated. Pretty cool. I had a plan to keep these, but then it's like honey-do list just keeps getting longer and longer, so it's just, I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, you'll see pictures on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, if you follow us on any of those. But now we got these pieces cut. yours should look good. Mine look good. If you do have a little extra groove in the end, don't worry about that. The glue will fill that space as you go to put in the Luan wood. All right. So now we got all our pieces. It's got the rabbits in there. I'm just going to mention this because I absolutely love it. But this is the rough cut lumber. All right. And this is wood that I buy a bunch of them from Currituck Sawmill. And Craig does an excellent job cutting me these planks. And I just let them sit out and dry for a couple of months, just out in the open. And this is wood that's bought from the store. It's very light because it's been put through a kiln, which is like an oven. But can you tell the difference in the texture? Like that, this wood's going to last a very long time because it has a bunch of moisture in it still. Not a ton. It's dried for over 6 months, but it's heavier. This cooked out all the moisture, and the only thing it's picking up is the moisture in the air. Burns very quickly. Slows down the burning actually, but it will burn as well because it's wood. But you're just going to go ahead and stick these together like that. Just do a rough outline, and then I'll measure it for you so you know what to cut. But if you miscut any of these, okay, and let's say you did what I did, you clamped them together, but you miscut the size, kind of like I did. Your size for your Luan wood cut is going to be a little different. But here, you're cutting an easy 12 inches wide for your Luan wood. And then here, you're cutting 18 and an eighth. So, I mean, I could probably just do 18 inches, 12 and 18, and I'm good to go because it's just going to sit in there. And I'm going to go ahead and cut some wood. All right, so just for everybody, this is what Luan wood looks like. Well, that has propolis on it, but this is Luan wood. It's supposed to fit in here, and then you cut a hole in it. That way there's ventilation. I was walking through the workshop, and I said, I'm going to do something different today because I really don't know what I'm going to do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and drill a hole in this and see what happens. It should be fun. Okay, so here's how I'm going to cut this. I got a scrap of terrible plywood, and I have from Lowe's a 2 1/2 or 3/4, probably says it on here, 2 3/4 inch hole saw. Now, I use this because mason jars will fit in that very easily. If you're taking your Luan wood and you're trying to cut a hole in it, you have a couple options. You can just use something like this, and all it does is it just drills a hole, and then you're good. Luan wood, I would recommend putting your drill in reverse and running it that way because Luan wood's very thin, kind of like the plastic here is. I'm going to put this bad boy in reverse and run it through, and it shouldn't really skip on me or anything like that. If you run either of these devices forward, it may skip on you and you may end up getting hurt. I've seen it before, and I've personally dealt with it. Not quite sure about the drill bit there and how I'm gonna not drill through my table, but should be fine. Mistakes are made. Let's tighten that. Let's do this. put it up so if my drill goes through, I'm not too worried about it. So I drilled through so that this piece could touch the plastic, and now I'm just going to drill backwards in reverse. Okay, and I don't know if you caught that, but I saw some separation. I'm just going to pull it out, and we'll see if we got a hole. Boom. Look at that. And then typically what you do with these things is there's a button here, you push it, you pull back, and if the piece of wood is in here, it'll stick. It being plastic, it doesn't really stick, but cool disc, bro. So that's now what oh, you can't even see that. That's now what I have. And I did not drill the table. You can tell I've made some mistakes in this table once or twice. I got a question off my last video that asked how long of brad nails am I using when I put together the shims. This being the inner cover, I'm still using these longer ones. They're about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I only do that because if you look at how I'm putting it together, I want to have a shot in here and a shot in here that are long, so that when I'm trying to pry this off the hive, we're not getting a whole lot of wiggling going on. If you want, you can even shoot in 2 here and 1 here, 2 and 2. It's really based off of how much your glue actually is effective in this, because you don't want to get into a hive a year later and you go to pry this up and this piece comes off, but this stays on the hive. Then you got to run around trying to find a new inner cover. Okay, we got our bad boy glued together. I shot some brad nails into it so it doesn't move around a whole lot. I have these shims here just to keep it from gluing to my workbench. I don't want to walk up, try to pick this up and it not move, and the whole workbench wants to come with me. So just remember that. And then typically I tell you wait until the glue dries, but I'm super excited about putting this plastic in. Now this plastics is kind of flimsy. It came from a poster frame, and I cut it with the table saw to length. And I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to get it to fit in there and stay. I'm thinking I might just do staples. I would like to do a caulking that goes all the way around, but now that I'm just looking at it, the hole is strictly for ventilation. I don't plan on putting a mason jar in there because you can move that. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to put some staples all the way around, and I'm going to call this project done. And if they end up gluing this to, or propolizing this to a hive and this stays on, okay, I'll come out and I'll fix it again. But this is a fun little experiment to do. And the cool thing about this is, if I want to take the top off of a hive to show people, I could just cover up this hole with a piece of plywood or Luan wood, come in, and then people can look at the bees underneath. So, and remember, Luan wood, when you put it in, should fill this entire gap here, the 1/4 of an inch. and then you're always putting it down like this, so there's bee space right here for the bees to walk around. You're not gonna flip this over and put it on like that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know how it works out for you when you make your inner cover. If it's the right dimensions and everything worked out just fine, or if you were struggling. I know Jared B asked for like circular saw instructions. I asked him if he had a table saw because that's, for me, it's going to be the safest way of building an inner cover. Circular saw, you just got to set up, piece of wood, fence, and then cut your wood safely as possible. Doing the angles is pretty easy too, because you just set your circular saw to 45 degrees and you cut the right angles. But let me know what you think about the transparent inner cover. Good idea, bad idea. Maybe the staples, if that's a good idea, or if caulking would have been better. Maybe Flex Seal. I have no idea. I've seen them put a boat together. But yeah, let us know how it goes. Remember to comment. All your comments, all they do is push our videos towards the top for people that look up beekeeping. Likes do the same thing, and so do views. So if you feel like sharing our YouTube out, please do. If you want to share any of the other social medias that we have out, please do. We're going to keep going with this. We have no plans on pumping the brakes or just dying off on you guys and no more videos. We're going to keep showing you our journey, and yeah, be safe out there. Be safe.